Every country has a sport that stops the nation. For Brazil, it's football. For India, cricket. For America, it's the Super Bowl. And for Venezuela, it's Miss Universe. In December 2025, on the night Clara Vegas Gertz was crowned Miss Venezuela, a 23-year-old student named Osvan Vegas, no relation, told the AFP news agency, and I'm quoting him, "In Venezuela, Miss Venezuela comes first, then baseball, and third football." He said that during a military standoff with the United States. He said that while firecrackers were going off outside the venue. When a Venezuelan ranks the pageant above the sport their country actually plays professionally, they mean it. Miss Universe 1981, Irene Saez, put it even better. She said, "In Venezuela, beauty contests are not a race, they're a religion." And nobody knows better than her. She became a Miss Universe, then a mayor, then a governor. And in 1998, she ran for president of Venezuela against Hugo Chavez. So today, we're telling the full story of the most successful, most obsessed, most mathematically fascinating pageant nation on earth. 13 crowns across both alpha pageants, 7 at Miss Universe, 6 at Miss World. More combined alpha crowns than any other country on earth. Not far behind is the USA, which has the added advantage of being the birthplace of Miss Universe, where they've won 9 of their 12 combined alpha titles. USA 9 wins, 9 first runner-up finishes. Venezuela 7 wins, 7 first runner-up finishes. Both nations with exactly a 50-50 split of their top 2 finishes. The identical top 2 conversion rhythm. America just has a couple more shots at it. Venezuela and India are tied for the most Miss World crowns in history, 6 apiece. At the pageant people forget to mention when they talk about Venezuelan dominance, Venezuela is joint number 1. And it goes beyond the alphas. Across all 4 Big Four pageants, Miss Universe, World, International and Earth, Venezuela has 24 titles. That's 2 at Earth and a record 9 at International. The most Big Fours of any nation on Earth. They're the only country to have won all 4 Big Four pageants multiple times. And the streaks. If you've seen my recent video, The Streak Breakers, you already know the headline numbers. The 4 longest placement streaks in Miss Universe history, all held by just 2 countries. That's not coincidence, that's a duopoly. So how did Venezuela build this? Through 5 eras. Now these eras aren't official. No one at the Miss Venezuela organisation sat down and drew these lines. They're my framing, based on where the data shifts. Era boundaries fall where the pattern of results changes. A new crown after a drought, a streak breaking, a structural event like leadership changes. Before we get stuck in, if you enjoy this kind of nerdy deep dive, please hit like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Venezuela competed at the very first Miss Universe in 1952, when Sofia Silva travelled to Long Beach, California. She didn't place, but the obsession predates Miss Universe itself. Miss Venezuela traces back to 1905, when Manuela Victoria Mujica Antich was elected by popular vote as the country's first beauty queen, half a century before Miss Universe existed. Here's a fact most non-Venezuelans don't know. Venezuela's first international crown was not at Miss Universe, it was at Miss World. Susana de Wim made the top 15 at Miss Universe in 1955, Venezuela's first ever Miss Universe placement. And then she went to London as Venezuela's first entrant in Miss World and won the crown, the first Latina to win either alpha pageant. The Venezuelan press called it a national triumph at a time when the country's pageant scene was still being protested by the Catholic Church. Over the next 2 decades, the foundations took shape. Cisneros-owned RCTV began broadcasting Miss Venezuela in 1962. In 1967, Mariela Perez finished first runner-up at Miss Universe, Venezuela's first top 2. By the mid-70s, Venezuela was producing regular top 5 finishes at both alpha pageants. Plus, Maria Conchita Alonso, yes, the actress, who finished top 7 at Miss World in 1975 before going to Hollywood. 2 first runners-up at Miss Universe, 0 titles, but the crown was getting closer. And quietly in 1969, a graphic designer named Osmel Sousa had joined the Venezuelan Beauty Committee. Ignacio Fontcol was running the show, but Osmel was watching and learning. 1 Miss World crown, 0 Miss Universe crowns, but the broadcast ecosystem was in place and the delegates were getting closer every year. Before we get to the crowns, we need to talk about the machine that produced them, because Venezuela's success at both Miss Universe and Miss World came from the same organisation, the same system, and essentially the same man. Ignacio Fontcol had been running the Miss Venezuela organisation since the early 1970s. Osmel joined in 1969 as a designer, peripheral at first, but increasingly involved through the late 70s. Fontcol built the foundations. Osmel was learning the architecture. In October 1981, Fontcol died. In February 1982, the Cisneros Group appointed Osmel Sousa as president of the MVO. He was 36 years old. What he built over the next 3 decades became the blueprint for pageant preparation worldwide. Training camps that lasted months, coaching in speech, movement, media, and Q&A. A delegation system that sent the Miss Venezuela winner to Miss Universe and the first runner-up to Miss World, later formalised in 1985 with the Miss Venezuela World title. 1 national pageant feeding both alpha competitions. And here's the part that needs to be addressed directly. Osmel's program openly incorporated cosmetic procedures as part of delegate preparation. This is often cited as the primary criticism of Venezuelan pageant success, that it was manufactured. The reality is that cosmetic surgery was a tool in the toolkit, used alongside training, styling, coaching, and platform development. Whether you think that's legitimate preparation or unfair advantage depends on where you draw the line. But the results speak for themselves, and they spoke at both Miss Universe and Miss World. Venevisión, owned by the Cisneros Group, turned Miss Venezuela into a national television event staged at the Poliedro de Caracas, a 20,000-seat arena. Sponsors lined up. The country watched. The machine had funding, methodology, and a single architect at the top. Maritza Sayalero had been a favourite from the moment her swimsuit photos emerged during competition week in Perth. And she lived up to it. She won the swimsuit round, she won the interview, she won the evening gown. After the crown was placed on her head in 1979, so many photographers stormed the stage that it literally collapsed under their weight. That's the image Venezuela's first Miss Universe left behind, a stage that couldn't contain the moment. And it was the first Miss Universe ever broadcast in colour in Venezuela. What the Venezuelan press called it that night is La Edad de Oro, the golden age of Miss Venezuela. The very next year, Maye Brandt represented Venezuela at Miss Universe in Seoul, where she went unplaced. She was just 21 when she died tragically in 1982. I'll return to her later in this video. The Miss Venezuela 1981 pageant produced 2 delegates who were about to make history. Irene Saez was crowned Miss Venezuela and sent to Miss Universe. Pilín León was first runner-up and sent to Miss World. Same organisation, same preparation, 2 women heading to the 2 biggest pageants in the world in the same calendar year. Irene had been orphaned by the age of 10. She was raised by her elder sister. She went to New York City and won the preliminary competition and all 3 semi-final rounds at the Minskoff Theatre. She took the Miss Universe crown. Pilín León, born in Maracay, travelled to London. She was 21, equally poised, and carried the same MVO preparation. She took the Miss World crown. 2 women from the same national pageant, crowned at the 2 biggest competitions in the world in the same calendar year. The Alpha Double. Only 4 countries have ever achieved this. Venezuela's was historic in a way the others weren't. Saez and León are widely believed to be the first instance of both alpha crowns being won by delegates from a single national pageant result. What Irene did after the crown is what makes her extraordinary. Mayor of Chacao, where she won re-election with 96% of the vote, the highest margin in Venezuelan democratic history. Governor of Nueva Esparta, presidential candidate in 1998. She's the Miss Universe who most fully embodies the Venezuelan belief that a crown is a platform for public life. In 1983, Paola Ruggeri made the top 12, beginning what would become a 21-year unbroken placement streak. 2 more top 5 finishes followed, and then Barbara Palacios won in Panama City. Her interview round is still talked about. When asked to create an advertisement for the host country, she smiled and said, "Mi nombre es Panama." Simple, warm, and demonstrating her knowledge of the actual slogan for Panama tourism at the time. While Miss Universe was producing crowns, Miss World was building its own remarkable run. Astrid Carolina Herrera won Miss World 1984, the first Miss World crown under Osmel's presidency. From 1984 to 1988, Venezuela made the top 5 at Miss World every year, including Albani Lozada's first runner-up finish in 1987. As an aside, Venezuela's dominance through the 1980s and into the 90s is one of the main reasons I got into pageantry. Watching Venezuela show up at Miss World and Miss Universe year after year, with delegates who looked like they'd been engineered for the stage, that's what made these competitions feel like an actual sport to me. The combined picture for the first dynasty: 5 alpha crowns in 8 years, an alpha double. Here's the paradox that defines the era. From 1991 to 2003, Venezuela made the top 5 or top 6 at Miss Universe, the question and answer rounds, where the crown is truly decided, every single year. 13 consecutive years. But in those 13 years, Venezuela won exactly 1 Miss Universe crown. What the Miss Universe only version of this story doesn't tell you is that Miss World was quietly delivering. Having said that, from the early 90s, the MVO structured its entire calendar around Miss Universe. Miss Venezuela moved from May to September, and the winner no longer competed at that year's Miss Universe. Instead, she was given a full year to prepare, competing at Miss Universe the following May. The runner-up went to Miss World. And because that shift left a gap for Venezuela's Miss Universe entry in 1991, a separate delegate had to be appointed. Jacqueline Rodriguez was exactly that, appointed to represent Venezuela at Miss Universe 1991, while the Miss Venezuela 1991 winner, Carolina Ishak, trained for over a year. It got to the point where the reigning Miss Venezuela crowned her successor and then left for Miss Universe. That's how much the MVO prioritized this competition. But the Miss Venezuela 1991 class wasn't just about Ishak. Ninibeth Leal, the first runner-up, went to Miss World and won it in Atlanta, while the MVO was building a year-long runway for its Miss Universe delegate. The Miss World candidate was winning crowns with the standard timeline. Carolina Ishak went to Bangkok after the extended preparation period. 20 years old, 1.86 meters tall, of Hungarian descent. In the preliminaries, she won all 3 segments with a combined score of 9.477, still the highest televised preliminary score in Miss Universe history. On finals night, she entered the top 6 in first place. Then came the Q&A. Her score was 9.486. She placed 4th, 0.028 of a point short of the top 3. The crown went to Michelle McLean of Namibia. In Venezuela, 1992 is remembered as La Corona Robada, the stolen crown. Ishak also held the longest reign as Miss Venezuela, 16 months, because of the calendar shift designed to give her exactly this kind of preparation advantage. From 1984 to 1996, Venezuela placed at Miss World 12 times out of 13 editions. 3 crowns. The only miss was 1989, when Miss World left London for the first time. Between 1981 and 1999, Venezuela reached the Q&A rounds at both Miss Universe and Miss World in the same calendar year 12 times, including a 6-year consecutive run from 1991 to 96. No other country has come even close, although notably, it hasn't happened again in those 25 years since 1999. Jacqueline Aguilera won Miss World 1995 from the same Miss Venezuela class that produced Alicia Machado. 2 Alpha crowns from the same national pageant, back to back. Then Venezuela's Miss World fortunes collapsed. Something structural was breaking, and it involved a woman named Martina Thorogood. While Miss World had previously been happy to reward Miss Venezuela runners-up with the blue crown, by the late 90s, that sentiment had shifted. Successive non-placements in 97 and 98 was Miss World's silent protest. So when Martina Thorogood won Miss Venezuela 1999, the MVO's plan was revolutionary. Send her to Miss World first, and then to Miss Universe. She would have been the first Venezuelan woman to compete at both Alpha pageants since Susana Duim in 1955, 44 years earlier. Thorogood finished first runner-up at Miss World, but because she placed so highly, she was blocked from competing at Miss Universe. An emergency pageant was held. Claudia Moreno won it, went to Miss Universe 2000, and finished first runner-up to India's Lara Dutta. At both Miss World 1999 and Miss Universe 2000, Venezuela finished first runner-up. Both times the crown went to India. The Thorogood crisis led directly to the founding of Miss World Venezuela as a separate pageant in 2000. Meanwhile, the Miss Universe crown had finally arrived. Alicia Machado won in Las Vegas, 10 years after Barbara Palacios. And she didn't just win, she dominated. In the top 10 interview, she pretended to be co-hosting Entertainment Tonight. In swimsuit, she ended with a shimmy unheard of for the 1990s. Most queens have one defining moment. Alicia had a handful. Her post-pageant arc became one of the most complicated of any Miss Universe. The body shaming from then MUO co-owner Donald Trump, her 2016 political advocacy, and in November 2025, widespread condemnation after she made racist remarks about Thai and other Asian pageant figures during a live stream. After Alicia in 1996, Marina Bencomo finished first runner-up in 1997. Verushka Ramirez, also first runner-up in 1998. 3 consecutive years in the top 2, but Venezuelan made history wasn't too far away. Venezuela's 2003 campaign almost didn't happen. The country was in economic crisis. Maria Angel Ruiz's sponsorship nearly fell through. She finished first runner-up to Amelia Vega of the Dominican Republic, who had briefly been trained in Venezuela by the same organization. Peak Osmel wasn't the era of most crowns. It was the era where his methodology produced the strongest delegate year after year. 1 Miss Universe crown, 4 first runners-up, 8 consecutive top 5s, a near three-peat, and the highest prelim score ever recorded, plus 2 Miss World crowns and the golden placement run of 12 from 13. The combined Alpha picture for Era 3, 3 Alpha crowns. The machine was running on both tracks, but not for long. Venezuela's economic crisis hit hard from 2003 onwards. General strikes, oil industry collapse, political instability under Chavez. The Miss Venezuela organization felt it directly. Preparation budgets were slashed. Ruiz's almost absence in 2003 was the warning sign, not the exception. And the Miss World track collapsed almost entirely. After the founding of Miss World Venezuela in 2000, the Miss World delegation received less investment and less of Osmel's personal attention. From 2000 to 2009, Venezuela's Miss World results were unplaced or first cut and out. The physical decline told its own story. The Poliedro de Caracas, 20,000 seats, the cathedral of Venezuelan pageantry, has hosted Miss Venezuela just once since 2013. The pageant moved to Studio 1 of Venevisión, then to the smaller Studio 5. And by 2023, it was being held on the terrace of a shopping centre. From an arena to a TV studio to a shopping mall, delegates arriving by bus and metro. Nina Cecilia told AFP, "It's not a moment to have an opulent Miss Venezuela, because what the country is going through doesn't justify it. But we don't want to give up." The dual system that had produced 12 from 13 Miss World placements a decade earlier was breaking apart. In 2004, Ana Karina Áñez shockingly went unplaced at Miss Universe. After 21 years, the longest non-US placement streak in Miss Universe history was over. Monica Spear finished fourth runner-up in 2005. Jixad Viña gave Venezuela's second non-placement in 3 years in 2006. At Miss World, Venezuela was unplaced in 2004 and 5. The machine was suddenly running on fumes. But then Lee Jonaitis made second runner-up at Miss Universe 2007, and it felt like an immediate return to form. In reality, it was the start of the wildest ride in Venezuelan pageant history. The economic crisis had hurt the MVO's reach. Miss World had been abandoned, budgets were slashed, but the core of Osmel's preparation system was still intact. When resources got scarce, he narrowed the focus. One delegate, one pageant, everything aimed at Miss Universe. Dayana Mendoza was 22 from Caracas, had survived a kidnapping during a carjacking 3 years earlier. She said the trauma taught her to remain poised under pressure. In Nha Trang, Vietnam, she became the 5th Venezuelan Miss Universe. But the following year, nobody expected a back-to-back. It had never been done before. Stefanía Fernández was 18 from Trujillo, the same state that had produced Barbara Palacios. In a top 5 Q&A round where nobody truly excelled, Stefanía stood out for the way she listened, intent, measured, showing maturity beyond her years. Dayana crowned her compatriot in Nassau, Bahamas. Chavez personally congratulated Stefanía. Venevisión aired a 5-hour tribute special. That's an Olympic gold medal welcome home. Both back-to-back winners have since found faith and expressed more complex views about pageantry. Their relationship with the industry that crowned them has evolved. At her final walk in 2010, Stefanía unveiled a Venezuelan flag with only 7 stars, the pre-Chavez flag, widely interpreted as a political protest on a global stage. That same year, Marilisa Gibson went home unplaced, the 3rd time Venezuela had failed to place the year after winning the crown. 2010 is the only year in Miss Universe history where both Venezuela and the United States went home unplaced on the same night. Gibson has since claimed that she learned she was excluded because Donald Trump had received boycott threats from other national directors if Venezuela won 3 years in a row. None of this is proven. While Miss Universe was delivering crowns and volatility, the Miss World story was mostly bleak. Adriana Vassini got things back on track, and the following year came Ivian Sarcos. Orphaned at 8, raised by nuns in a convent in Cojedes, one of 13 siblings, she represented Amazonas state, deep interior Venezuela. She won Miss World 2011 in London. Her homecoming on Venevisión drew a 7-hour special with a 73% audience share. Chavez received her at Miraflores Palace. She said eloquently, "This has taught me that life, although it may be bad, doesn't have to end badly." Venezuela's 6th and most recent Miss World crown. Irene Esser was one of the favourites heading into Miss Universe 2012. She was strong all night. And then came the Q&A. Esser chose to answer in English rather than Spanish and delivered a rambling response involving surfing metaphors. She still finished second runner-up. The crown was arguably within reach if she'd answered in her native language. Nobody back home expected Gabriela Isler to win, but she won in Moscow in 2013, the 7th and most recent Venezuelan crown, which could have been the 8th and a second back-to-back if 2012 results were different. Gabriela took the underdog narrative and turned it into a leadership career, becoming national director of the MVO. Migbeles Castellanos made the top 10 in 2014. Mariana Jimenez repeated it in 2015. 2 top 10s, solid but not the podium finishes Venezuela expected. Memoriam was heavily favoured going into Miss Universe 2016. Nearly every prediction list had her in the top 5. She went home unplaced. El Tocuyo, Habacha's hometown, became shorthand in pageant circles for the most favoured delegate who shockingly fails to place. A word born from Venezuelan heartbreak, still in use to this day. Casey Sayago made the top 5 in 2017, but the era was winding down. Mendoza, Fernández, Sarcos, Isler, 4 Alpha Crowns in 6 years. The roller coaster hit peaks nobody thought possible, and troughs that matched. Since Venezuela's first Miss Universe win in 1979, the 2 greatest Miss Universe nations have been remarkably close. USA 91.5% placement rate, Venezuela 85.1%, 6 percentage points between them. Expanding it to both alphas, since 1979, Venezuela has entered both alpha pageants 44 times. They failed to place at either one just 3 times, 1982, 2004 and 2016. A 93% hit rate of placing at least one alpha pageant every single year. And each of those 3 blanks marks a turning point. The year after the alpha double, the year the streak broke, and the year El Tocuyo was born. In 2018, the machine broke. Laura Weffer's investigation revealed a sex for sponsorship scandal within the Miss Venezuela organization. Contestants struggling to afford the $32,000 needed to compete were being introduced to wealthy sponsors in exchange for sexual favors. Osmel Sousa resigned on February 6, 2018. The scandal ended Osmel's 36-year reign at the MVO, but it didn't end his presence in pageantry. In March 2024, Raul Rocha announced Osmel was joining the Miss Universe organization as an advisor. His tenure lasted just 1 pageant cycle. On November 5, 2025, Osmel announced his departure from the MUO after publicly calling Isla's crown a gift from a Russian businessman, and Puerto Rico's 1993 win by the grace of the Holy Spirit. Osmel Sousa's contribution to Venezuelan pageantry across Miss Universe, Miss World, and Miss International is immense. Nearly everything Venezuela achieved on the international stage between 1982 and 2018 bears his fingerprint. But the manner of his departure from both the MVO and the MUO has left a legacy more complicated than the record alone would suggest. New leadership took over, Gabriela Isler and Nina Cecilia, with Jacqueline Aguilera also involved early on. 3 former international queens rebuilding an institution from the inside. Stephanie Gutierrez finished second runner-up in 2018. She'd reportedly continued preparing with Osmel privately after his exit. After a few years of underwhelming results, including another non-placement, they improved drastically under the new leadership. Amanda Dudamel placed first runner-up in 2022, 3 top 5 finishes in 4 years. Since Sarcos won in 2011, Venezuela has not made it past the top 30 or 40, a 14-year drought. The divergence is the story of this era. At Miss Universe, 88% placement rate. At Miss World, 4 placements, but none past the first cut. The machine that once ran both alpha pageants simultaneously now runs 1 at best. The rebuild isn't complete, but at Miss Universe, Venezuela is a top-tier nation again, consistently excellent without being dominant. And at Miss World, they've gone from 12 placements in 13 editions to no finals in 14 years. A country reinventing itself at one alpha pageant while the other has gone dark. Before we close, I want to take a moment. This video is about statistics, eras, crowns, and placements. But behind every sash is a real person. And sadly, not all of the Miss Venezuelas from the past 7 decades are still with us. Here, I'd like to pay tribute to 3 of the dearly departed. Maye Brunt, Miss Venezuela 1980. She competed at Miss Universe in Seoul, the year after Sayalero made history. She was 21 when she died in 1982. Her story remains one of the most painful chapters in this pageant's history. Eva Ekval, Miss Venezuela 2000, third runner-up at Miss Universe 2001. Television news anchor and author. Her book Fuera de Foco documented her breast cancer treatment through photography. She passed away in 2011, aged 28. Monica Spear, Miss Venezuela 2004 and fourth runner-up at Miss Universe 2005. She became one of Venezuela's most beloved telenovela actresses. In January 2014, she and her ex-husband were murdered in a roadside robbery on a Venezuelan highway. Their 5-year-old daughter, Maya, survived, wounded. These 3 women represented Venezuela on the world stage. They deserve to be remembered for more than their pageant results. Venezuela's delegate for Miss Universe 2026 is Clara Vegas Goetz. She was crowned Miss Venezuela on December 4, 2025 at the Centro Comercial Líder in Caracas. The 3rd consecutive year the national pageant was held on a shopping centre terrace. Clara's mother is Andreina Goetz, Miss Venezuela 1990, top 10 at Miss Universe the same year. 36 years between mother and daughter. A second-generation Miss Universe Venezuela delegate stepping onto the stage her mother once stood on. If you want to understand why Venezuela keeps producing queens even when the economy collapses, even when the pageant moves from an arena to a shopping mall, it's this. Venezuela is a pageant culture deep enough that daughters grow up watching their mothers on that stage and then stand on it themselves. 13 Alpha Crowns, more than any other nation. The most Big Four titles of any country, the only back-to-back Miss Universe. An Alpha Double, and almost technically a second one. The second longest Miss Universe placement streak. 12 from 13 Miss World placements in the golden era. 12 years of Q&A finalists at both Alphas simultaneously. The highest televised preliminary score ever recorded. A stolen crown. A 7-star flag. El Tocuyo. An orphan raised by nuns who won Miss World. A daughter walking in her mother's footsteps. Venezuela doesn't do pageantry the way other countries do pageantry. They do it louder, more often, more dramatically, and with more passion than anyone else in this sport. It's their Olympics. It always has been. And whatever happens next, it's going to be worth watching. If you've enjoyed watching this deep dive, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, and if you want to go the extra mile, super thanks genuinely helps keep this channel going, and I appreciate every single one. I'm the Pageant Nerd. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.